This is an update to the documentary called You Be the Judge, the Marita Murphy story. I'm the test case in Melbourne that challenged the statute of limitations laws and was given a permanent stay on my rape trial. I was looking for a day in court and that was denied me. The personal cost to my quest for justice after alleged childhood rapes is that the impact on my family has been tremendous. As a result of my failed civil bid to get heard about alleged child sexual abuse, we have to leave our family home. My marriage is over, 38 years. We are separated under the one roof. That breakdown has come as a direct result of me putting us into this financial black hole, and I'm assuming that wouldn't have happened if I had had an outcome that was successful. That's why I'm doing the documentary, to highlight that they've changed the statute of limitations laws, but they're still not going to let you come into court. Mum was sick in hospital when I was 7, and I was standing here with my gran, and there was some people coming from Melbourne to take me to help for a holiday, and they came and I was very scared because the lady, we didn't see many strangers because we just had this little isolated community back in 68. Not even everybody had a car and nobody had a phone. And I didn't want to go with these people, but I had no say. Other families took my brothers. And I went to Melbourne with these people, and the first night I was there, the abuse started, and I didn't say anything, so... My mother had died at the end of 2008, and the judges said, well, you know, she said she was protecting her mother, why didn't she go to the police when her mother died? Well, I'm happy in any forum to explain my actions or my inactions, because that's just victim blaming. That's got nothing to do with anything. Where's the template to say, if you follow this formula, you're going to get some sort of justice for child rape? Because it doesn't exist.
Well, I'm an honest fella. Like, if it didn't happen, I'd say it didn't happen. If it's all rosy, I'd say it's all rosy. It's not all rosy. Prior to us getting married, you'd felt that, you know, you had something to tell me, and you told me that the fact that you'd been raped, that you needed to tell me so as there'd be a clean slate for us to start our life together.
So, 1st of July 1968, Dad died, and I can remember that extremely clearly. I can remember the events of the day and the events of his funeral, and the realisation that our family was now different to every family in the town that had large families, often larger than ours, but functioning families in the fact that they had a mother and a father. And the thing with child sexual abuse that you realise now is that a vulnerable child is a target. And I was just about to become that vulnerable child. In the summer of 1968, Mum had a hysterectomy. various people who knew Mum stepped in at this point to take children away to help, because Mum wasn't home and I was there with Gran at 84 years of age and me being 7. When the lady came and she got out of the car, I can remember standing there with Gran and having a feeling of apprehensiveness and not being comfortable, and I know now that she got instinct, because out of that car got 3 youths with the woman. So there was 2 boys, which I know now were her sons, and another youth who was an Aboriginal. I'd never met an Aboriginal before, and I can remember feeling very uneasy and pushing into Gran's skirts and really not wanting to go, but I was a child back in those days. Children were seen and not heard. This needed to be done. These people had come from Melbourne to pick me up to help, so I went with them. So after a big trip with these people, we arrived at the house. So the lady put me into bed the first night, and I was in a room on my own, which is the same as what it was at home, so that wasn't very scary. And very excitingly, there was a radio in the room, and I thought, wow, this is pretty special. And the radio was on, and she said, "You turn off that radio before you go to sleep." And she turned off the light and left me in the room alone. And at some point after that, suddenly there was a hand across my mouth, and I'm going to say I was terrified, because I'm sure I would have been terrified, because I was only 7 and this was my first time away from the family unit. And it was the Aboriginal youth, who I know a lot about now, but I didn't then. I was very scared. He sexually abused me. I can't even go into details. It is a long time ago and the courts are going to use that against me, but the Aborigine came into my room and he started sexually molesting me, and he told me not to say anything or I would get into trouble. In the morning when I woke up, the woman came in, and I know who she was now. Her name was Mrs. And she went cross at me because the radio was on, and I was just scared. I didn't know these people. I didn't tell her. I'd been threatened. I'd been sexually abused in the first night. I was probably like a stunned mullet or a stunned rabbit. I just don't know what I did. I didn't do anything. And she gave us breakfast and sent us outside to play, and she sent us outside every day. Now, I did think maybe this woman didn't know about the ways of boys. I've since found out that she had daughters herself, but none of those girls were there. There was only the 3 boys in the school holidays of the summer 1968. I can say to you now today that and were very busy with the business of being horny 14-year-old boys, and I was to be their girl in a week to 10 days of unprotected sex. The pinnacle of the abuse was the mother sent us to the beach, and they had 3 bikes, so I was put on the back of a bike, and I loved the beach and I loved water and I loved swimming, but they didn't have the beach on their mind. So they ditched that plan and took me under an overpass, a bridge, and they posted as a lookout, because they knew what they were doing was wrong. They knew what they were going to do was wrong, and first and then removed my clothing, and they raped me. They threatened me. They said that I wasn't to tell. Every night we sat down to have dinner, the father would come home. His name was... Children in those days, you were small, you were seen but not heard, you had to have manners. There's a hierarchy and you're at the bottom, right at the bottom. So I don't know what prompted me, but I spoke at the table, and because they've lied, we'll never ever really be able to have the proper sequence of what happened, but when I spoke, I was promptly and immediately removed from the home. So the adults knew, and Mum got me back with the message that what had happened, that I'd been interfered with, and I'm sure no mother of any daughter would ever want to get a daughter back with the message of accompanied me when I went back to So Mum said to me that we wouldn't talk about it, and we didn't talk about it. I went back to pretending, a loudmouth that has this big secret that doesn't talk about it. So I can sort of look back now and say the behavioural problems, the alteration in personality, the aggressiveness, the anger, all started from that point. I became a problem child. I became a problem to Mum, and I had this sense of power that I have something over you, Mum. I've got something that I can hold over you. And as I got older, I just got angrier. As victims will tell you, this is quite normal behaviour, but looking back now, it's not very normal. And I had these rages that were just unbefitting to a small child, a small girl, and I would just go off the planet. My mum had very clear boundaries and she enforced them. I can remember her sending me to my room on a couple of occasions for behaviour that wasn't acceptable. So in my room they had a box of boxes, and the box of boxes was boxes of jigsaws, because we didn't have a TV. So if it was raining and the school holidays were on, someone might be doing a 5,000 piece jigsaw, and my concentration had gone, so I didn't do anything like that. So she put me in my room and I was really angry, and I saw the box of jigsaws up high and I thought, I reckon I could reach that if I tried hard enough, and I got it down and I thought, what would really do this family's head in is if I tipped a jigsaw out. But I didn't just tip one out, I tipped them all out. And I couldn't see my floor in my bedroom. And as I was doing it, I just thought, I'm going to die. They're going to kill me, not just Mum. They're all going to kill me. I would have been 8 and 9 and sobbing and being upset and being angry and sobbing until you think that you're just going to break, just coming from the depth of your being as you're growing up, not coping well with school, not coping well socially. It got to the point where I got to grade 6 across the road and things weren't good, and there was a nun there, and Mum went over and she said she begged them to keep me back in grade 6 because I was a bit young. I was having all sorts of personal behaviour issues, and she thought that if they held me back in grade 6, that might help me before I went to secondary school. They said no way did they want me for another year. Not on your Nellie, wouldn't entertain it for a minute. We just want her out of here. So she was faced then with where do I go to school at 11. So Scion College in Warragul beaconed because that was where both Mum and my sister had been, and they'd been boarders. But that facility no longer existed. So to attend Scion College in Warragul, I would have to travel. And that's what I did. I caught the bus as an 11-year-old at 7 o'clock in the morning, took a bus and then a train, and then walked quite a long distance to Scion College, where the new teacher, her first year of teaching, had the year 7s, and she cried every day, that teacher. She was just sport for me, and that wasn't sustainable, either me being there or me travelling such a distance at 11, so I only lasted for a year, and then I went to Pakenham High. When I started at Pakenham High, we were going to the pool this particular day, and a lovely young man walked beside me all the way from the high school to the pool and back, which is quite a distance. He made it quite plain that he fancied me. Internally, I was concerned that boys were starting to take an interest in me, and I decided to get a skinhead. I thought that might help if I got rid of my blonde hair. I know now as an adult and a mature woman that what had happened to me over the course of that week of unprotected sex at 7 was now impacting me as I'm trying to get an education. So I left school completely. We're here at the Burrumbeek Turf Club with this little bear. This bear is for abused, disadvantaged. So this little bear I certainly could have done with age 7 and 8 in trying to recover from sexual abuse. And so because the justice system doesn't work, we're pushed to tying ribbons on a fence to call it a loud fence, to say there should be no more silence around child sexual abuse. So I'm the self-appointed high priestess of the Loud Fence in Ballarat. Because I left school at 12, I didn't have a lot of career options. Brian Courtney was a racehorse trainer based at Caulfield, and he'd been Victoria's leading trainer from 1960 to 63. He said, yes, you can have a job with me. So at 15, I went to the racing stables at Caulfield, and if you're ever going to send your daughter somewhere, it'd probably be the last place that you would send her and her be safe. But prior, forewarned is forearmed, so I had a pretty good sense of keeping myself safe. It was a pretty dodgy place to be, there's no doubt about it. I don't think I would have touched drugs, but I did drink alcohol and I did walk on the road there. I went to parties, and I wasn't in a very safe place, but I made myself safe and I made some good friends, and those friends remain today. After years of being a daughter and a sister and a wife and a mother, I suddenly kind of thought it's time for me. And one of the first things that menopausal women will notice is a disruption in sleep. I hadn't been sleeping very well, and I would make to-do lists in my head at night, and suddenly up on my to-do list popped, go to the police. That's a bit of a random thought. So 2012, I rang the police here in Ballarat to find, to my enormous horror, that I couldn't speak. And that was pretty embarrassing for someone who likes to talk a lot. And the policeman said to me, "Lady, I don't know what happened to you, but you need counselling." And I made a police report. It was just myself and Senior Detective Matthew Young of the Socket. And even the procedures, although they're better now, I was kind of still surprised that I only spoke to one policeman. And he said three things. He said, "I believe you." "Oh, do you? That's very nice." "You need counselling." "Do I?" It turns out I was pretty angry. And 3, you need to lodge a VOCAT claim. And I said, "What's that?" And he said, "It's a victim of crime claim." And I said, "Is that funded by the taxpayer?" And he said that it was. And I said, "Well, I don't need it, thank you, I'm fine. I think the poor old taxpayer's got enough on his plate. So I'm fine, thank you, I don't need it." At that point, looking back now, you can think, gosh, that's really strange. You can go in there and report a rape or multiple rapes, and including gang rape, and they don't mention justice anywhere. He took it seriously, and he started to work on it, and we didn't get very far. And I was sitting in the foyer waiting, and they came in like 2 naughty schoolboys, but they're both bigger than me, big men, powerful men, entitled men, wealthy men, whenever wrong men, those type of men. And the lawyer put his hand out and shook my hand, and I shook his hand, and then he stepped back, and there's my perpetrator. We meet again. And he stepped forward and put out his hand, and I just put my hands behind my back, and I said, "Don't you touch me." So we went in and had a meeting, and big boardroom, and the lawyer sat at the head of the table, and my perpetrator sat across the table, and I just felt incredibly calm, and I'd waited for so long for this moment. Towards the end of the hour, he got up and he put his hands on the table. He had his phone on the table in front of him, and I had my phone in my pocket turned off out of respect. And he put his hands on the table, and he leaned across the table to me, and he said, "Do you know who I am?" And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, you've obviously got a licence to rape and plunder at will. The laws of the land don't apply to you, and stupid me doesn't know this. I mean, what is that supposed to mean? Do you know who I am? I'm so entitled, I can do what I like. No, the laws of the land don't actually work like that. As he started to sit back down, I thought, yes, I do know who you are because you're so stupid you've been telling me, and I know for sure that I said, yes, I know who you are now. I said, I know 100% sure you're the man who raped me when I was a little girl. And with that, he picked up his phone and he stormed out of the room. Goodbye. So his lawyer's there, and I stood up, and his lawyer stood up, and his lawyer's bigger than me and stronger than me, and he stood over me and he poked me. He didn't touch me, and he said, we are going to break you. We are going to drag you all the way to the Supreme Court. And I'm like, really comfortable with that. Don't have a problem with that at all. Be more than happy to go to the Supreme Court. So in America, in all the different states now, they're agitating to get the statute of limitations changed. And I'm like, be very careful what you wish for. They changed here in 2015. Nothing's changed. They're still not going to let you into court. How does a 7-year-old gather evidence? How does a 7-year-old stand up for herself? Am I a dirty, rotten liar? No, I'm not. Do I want to be heard? Yes, I do. Am I frightened? Not really. What's he going to sue me for? Telling the truth? I have absolute proof of an over 40-year relationship between the two families. My perpetrator's namesake uncle was a Catholic priest. He'd instructed Mum into the Catholic faith and baptised her. She was a convert. He married Mum and Dad at St Augustine's Church in Burke Street, Melbourne on the 31st of the 5th, 1949. He baptised my eldest sister when she was born. He travelled to Kyneton to baptise my brother Gerard. He wrote to Mum on the death of her mother, who was a non-Catholic. And it was because of this ongoing relationship that I was sent to his brother's house when Mum was sick. Stopped your labour and you prayed. And so that bell is now rung automatically. Little shed over the back. Here we are in Mum's kitchen, and we can do whatever we like because Mum's actually not here. We'll be 10 years in December. I had a meeting that lawyer called and I went alone. So what do I do after that meeting to prove that I'm telling the truth and I am truthful? I rang my 5 brothers who at that point I didn't know if they knew, if they had prior knowledge. All that had happened up to that point was I'd made a statement to the police. My husband Gary had given the police a statement because he had prior knowledge before we were married. And my sister Miriam, who lives in Perth, the oldest of the family, she had also made a statement to the police when the police went to interview about this matter. So when I rang my brothers, all 5 of them one Friday afternoon, our oldest brother Bernard is 10 years older than me, and he was not here in my formative years because he had been away at boarding school at Rupertswood, we say Salesian College?
Salesian College,
Sunbury. So both Louis and Bernard knew, and they were happy to provide statutory declarations. And Bernard can't be here today, but I'll just read it because in typical Bernard fashion, it's pretty blunt. It just says, I, Bernard Joseph Elliott, do solemnly and sincerely declare that my mother confided to me as the oldest son that my sister Marita was raped. This happened after the death of my father, who died on the 1st of the 1st, 68, while I was studying engineering at Melbourne University and residing at Newman College. And that has been witnessed by the police in Pakenham in the state of Victoria. So, would you like to just recall, Louis, what you were happy to write and provide me with once I spoke to you about me making a police statement in 2014?
This here is a document that I put together after my sister contacted me in the UK, where I've been living. I wish to confirm certain facts pertaining to my sister Marita, told to me by her mother in the early 70s. Because of the allegations, my mother insisted I tell nobody, a promise I have honoured until now, when Marita asked me if I knew what had happened to her as a child. I gathered Marita was referring to the molestation she experienced while staying with the family around the time of our father's death. My understanding is that Marita was sexually abused by and 2 other boys during this period. Mother did not go into any more detail. I have been asked by Marita to declare my awareness of these facts and will have this declaration certified by a practicing member of the Law Society, which makes this a legal document. Yours faithfully, Louis or L.G. Elliott, 27/2015. Well, I've read the statement that I made again, and I don't have any problems with any of it. So I've known about this since approximately the age of 15, after Dad died.
With the knowledge I have now, we're actively telling people probably don't report, because it just creates jobs for the boys. You don't actually get any justice. The only justice that would have helped me was when I was very young. If there had been some repercussions from those boys, if they had been made to write me a letter of apology, and I had had access to that letter, every time I felt really bad, I could have opened that letter and read that they were sorry for what they did to me, and I probably would have coped. So that's what happened to the gold.
I remember that.
Louis, when I started on this journey, you gave me some information which I found very re-traumatising and confronting. Would you confirm that you told me that that I'd also been raped with a stick, which I hadn't reported?
Yes.
Oh my God, it was just... It's incomprehensible. It's incomprehensible. I had a hard time dealing with that, and I had a hard time leaving here and going to edit You Be the Judge to pass Saviour College, and to think that I'd been a grade 2 student in there, the youngest that started in 1966. I was only 4, so I was only just 7. I just made my first Holy Communion outside there. I have the photos of it, and I was to be abused by Year 8 student from Saviour College.
I was living with Mum, and she wanted someone to know what she'd been through on her own, because Dad had died, and Marita had been sent to stay with the Conlons, and this happened, and Mum had a breakdown.
Knowledge is power.
Yes, that Marita had stayed with the Conlons, and that she'd been interfered with.
Such a lovely term for rape, isn't it? It must be the Catholic terminology. And I wasn't sent there, they came and got me. And just to put into context how now I know that Elstonwick popped up, Father Pooley, who we'll look at on the historical signboard there, he was the founder of Maryknoll, and he was a really good priest. This was a lovely community, safe community to grow up in, safe all bar one dark cloud. And he'd been the parish priest prior at Elstonwick. And I found this out, and also found out that Auntie Nan Thomas, my godmother, who I was supposed to go and stay with, they'd
I stayed with Auntie Nan.
They'd lived at Elstonwick, so this little community of the Conlons, because I wondered why Mrs. Conlon wanted to come all this way to pick me up. but she would have had a friendship apart from Father John Connellan with Father Pooley, because he'd been their parish priest. So when you go back into it and you delve, it all makes sense. So in the fact that I wasn't sent there, she came and got me. And that's imprinted in my brain to this day, the car pulling up, her getting out, these three youths, and Eugene obviously being an Aboriginal. I'd never met an Aboriginal before. So I've got a confession to make while we're here on the grounds that you've got the Bible. Maryknoll later progressed to all the roads Aboriginal names, and they put in metal signposts, and some rotten mongrel bent every single new signpost for Maryknoll. And I actually would like to take this opportunity in the church grounds to apologise for my behaviour. Had someone questioned me, I would not have had a good reason for doing that. I jumped onto every sign, hung off it, and had this great feeling of achievement in bending all these Aboriginal signs. And now I can say I was really angry. I was really disturbed. I was really upset. If you're raped, how can you ever be unraped? My childhood was over at 7. It wouldn't matter how much money someone gave me now. I can't go and buy a new childhood. I can't go and buy good mental health for my mother, who later on, when our son had a mental health breakdown at 18, Mum said to me, this happened to me. I just was shaking all the time. And she said, I was hospitalised and away from you children. And she said, they said, eventually you'll get better. And eventually she said, I did get better. And she came back, and she was a really good mum in that she was strong. Everyone had some issues with her because she was so unbending. Her rules were enforced. We got our mouths washed out with soap. You had to go to mass. You weren't allowed to go on the dole. You had to work. You had to be honest. You weren't allowed to tell lies. Rah, rah, rah. No sex before marriage. Pure. Just... She raised 7 good citizens, and my 6 siblings all support me, and that's a really lovely thing, because you're not sure when you come out and you go public and you talk about it. I wasn't really sure what my brothers would be like, and actually they were very beautiful, because I didn't know whether they dismiss it and say, oh, it was a long time ago. It's so condescending to say that to people. It happened. Oh, why don't you just get over it? If I could have got over it by now, I would have. Rape is a serious crime. It's second in severity to murder, and if you're murdered, you're dead. You don't have to live with it. If you're raped, you have to live with it. Children need to be protected, and the law's not doing enough. The system doesn't work. So I've challenged the system. I'm not very happy with it. And because the system wouldn't help me, I'm now having to do things myself. But that's okay, because if we're successful, we can highlight all the inadequacies. So here we are in Collingwood. We're going to find Eugene, one of my perpetrators when I was gang raped. When Eugene was young, his life was obviously in turmoil, because he escaped in 1968 from not 1 but 2 remand centres. So let's hope we find him, guys, and I can have another talk to him. I've already been to meet with Eugene, and he said, lady, you need your money back. And he signed a bit of a confession of sorts. So I've been here before. I know Richmond pretty well, and I know Carlton pretty well, but I didn't know Collingwood very well. But I'm making myself comfortable. That's what I like to do, make myself comfortable. There he is, hanging out with his mates. are you, Eugene? Good. I was wondering if I'd be able to talk to you. Yeah. Thank you. Do you remember me?
Yep.
Good. I've done this for you. I haven't been able to get any of my money back,
Right.
but I got this for you.
Yep.
Can you have a read of it? It's yours to keep. Yeah, come for a walk. Can we go this way? Can we go this way? But without your help, I'm stuck. I can't do anything. Do you remember? He's a pig. He's a liar. You've showed more class than. I don't want you to have any trouble. I will defend you to the hilt if you will help me. I can't do it without you. Do you remember when the police first arrested you?
No.
Did you remember me as a kid?
I threw it out, to be honest. The police never arrested me.
The police didn't arrest you about what happened in 1968.
No. They came and interviewed me, but I never arrested
Oh, okay. So they come and interviewed you.
Yeah.
Would you consent to be on camera with me talking to you?
About what?
About this matter of me trying to take to court. I can't force you to do anything, but if you help me, I can get my money back through the redress scheme at least, and I can show that. Look, the police flew to WA and interviewed, and he said you were there at their house. I can't produce you and put you there if you don't exist, Eugene. I was 7. I don't want you to get into any trouble. You can be, if I forgive you and you say you don't remember you've had a brain injury, tell them that. Come round the corner and tell them that. You've had a hard life, Eugene. I know you've had a hard life because I've read and studied Uncle Eugene, Yogi. And lots of people that you know, I know, and they're saying to me, how are you getting on? And I can say to them, Eugene's been great. I really thank you. So going back, I found that my grandfather and my namesake, M. Elliott, had been the manager of Tirana. I didn't know that. I never met my grandfather. Yeah? So you spent some time in Tirana?
I spent a lot of time in Tirana.
Why? Was it family disintegration?
No, it was stolen gen.
Stolen
It started it.
generations. Yeah. And you originated from, like, you're not from Framington or
No, it's like Conda.
Lake
In the
Conda?
same area.
Same area, yeah.
Same region, not the same region.
So when you escaped from 2 remand centres in 1968, did you go and stay at a white person's place in Nepean Highway, Elstonwick?
Yeah. I don't know.
Anyway, the 2 brothers there, apparently she had 4 daughters. I said that she had 6, but she had 4 daughters. There was no daughters in the house at that time.
I think there was.
Okay. And could you explain about your acquired brain injuries so that, you know...
Just over the years, just deteriorated.
I've been very careful with my money and our money and worked hard, and I want to get my money back. So would you support me into the redress scheme, Eugene?
Yeah.
You think I'm a credible person?
Well, I've met you a few times, so I think you're pretty credible.
Thank you. And have I threatened you, Eugene?
No.
No. Well, I hold you in very high regard for what you've done, and I really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, as of today, we've met and talked to Eugene, who's shown great bravery and class. I haven't asked him to admit to any sexual abuse, which those allegations were made in my original police statement. I don't think I need to do that. I don't need to make him feel vulnerable. He's already marginalised in society and with his health. I just want to highlight the fact that the white man's law only works for white man, and people in this case have lied, and yet I'm the one that's out of pocket apart from being sexually abused. So here I am in Victoria and I say where you can get raped and robbed, and it's all legal. I have no criminal history. I have no one with a criminal past supporting me, and yet 2 out of the 3 people whose names I took to the police have criminal records, and yet they're believed over me. So it's nearly 50 years. Well, sure, that's a long time, and witnesses might have trouble remembering, but I haven't forgotten, and I still have a sense of outrage and injustice as strong today, perhaps aided by the fact that I'm a mother myself. What mother would want to get her 7-year-old daughter back with the message that she'd been interfered with? I certainly wouldn't want to, and that's why, even though my husband says it didn't impact on our marriage, well, how do you explain the fact that none of our 4 children ever went on a sleepover, a school camp, kindergarten or daycare? I was terrified that something would happen to my children if I wasn't there to protect them, like what happened to me when my mum was ill in hospital. I have a media release here, which I'm now going to read out. Award-winning child sex abuse survivor and advocate calls on the Victorian Government to fund High Court appeal to overturn the permanent stay on landmark Victorian civil litigation case. Key points. The Victorian Court of Appeal in Policeman v Murphy 2017 unanimously allowed the appeal and ordered the proceedings permanently stayed. Key arguments being the trial would be based on childhood memories from long ago, in addition to the substantial lapse of time, making memories so affected as to make the proceedings unfair. Although the central parties were alive and unaffected by any mental impairment. I have a psychiatric report which supports me. In reform of civil statutes of limitation for child sex abuse claims, seismic change and ongoing challenges, 2020, legal scholars Dr. Ben Matthews and Elizabeth Dalston opine reasons given in Policeman v Murphy 2017 should not have been judged sufficiently exceptional to warrant a permanent stay. The Victorian Law Reform Commission Improving the Justice System Response to Sexual Offences Report 2020 recommended the Victorian Government should provide funding for people who wish to bring civil proceedings in certain circumstances. Their case raises important systematic or legal issues, or they face multiple barriers to justice and their case has reasonable prospects of success. At stake is the denial of civil justice for all historic abuse survivors. Policeman v Murphy 2017 set an unjust precedent that normal circumstances, significant passage of time and the reliance on childhood memories are exceptional circumstances that can warrant denial of access to civil justice for historic abuse survivors. Based on opinions of legal scholars Dr. Ben Matthews and Elizabeth Dalston, an appeal of Policeman v Murphy 2017 in the Australian High Court has a reasonable prospect of success. Ms. Murphy now faces multiple barriers to justice, making an appeal impossible without government funding and support. The justice system wrongly denied my day in court based on normal circumstances for all historic abuse survivors being judged as exceptional. The personal well-being costs I have endured as a result, including financial, have been profound. Healing requires justice. Marita Murphy, myself, is a Ballarat-based sexual assault advocate who received the 2022 Australian Medical Association President's Award for her work advocating for both child abuse awareness and to change the statute of limitations for rape victims in Australia. Ms. Murphy's document, You Be the Judge, tells her story of her alleged rapes at the age of 7 and her subsequent encounters with the Australian justice system, and was released in 2021, and this is an update to that. Somebody the other day said to me, your case is really complex, and I said, no it's not, it's very simple, one of a slide. At a 1% conviction rate, there's simply not enough being done to protect women and children. Calling it out.
Lady, do you know the way from here to a place where we both could fly? And maybe lately you've been sad and cold, but it's all part of growing wise. Let it all go, let it all die, letting your life pass you by. Nothing to show and nothing worth trying.